Well, let's see. Esther and Aunt Brandy, they did quite a bit of shopping, um, miscellaneous items for the new apartment. And by the time they got home, Aunt Brandy was exhausted. Uh, they both toiled a little bit in the house and chatted a while. Aunt Brandy said to Esther, "Hope you don't mind if I go to bed, but I am exhausted, and I will be getting up early tomorrow for work." And Esther said, "Of course not." She said, "I might jump on my bike and go buy a few more groceries at Mr. Ho's grocery store and pay him for the waffle maker we decided to keep." Um, Esther said, "I'm feeling much better now. I believe that the jet lag is gone, and I'll be back to normal," which normal for me is 3.5 to 4.5 hours of sleep a night, which allows me to accomplish a lot of things during a regular day. So Aunt Brandy said goodnight. She went to her bedroom, spent a little time looking at everything in amazement, was very pleased with what she had accomplished so far, fell in love with her walk-in closet, and put a few of the new clothes away that she had purchased. Esther, after straightening up the kitchen, washing all of the new place settings and dishes, um, it was late. It was maybe 9:30, 10, and she decided she knew that Mr. Ho's groceries would be open, so she was going to go buy a few groceries. And she went out of the apartment. As she left, she looked back into the apartment after walking into the hallway and studied everything. This was a habit that Esther had learned from her father and other soldiers and people in special forces, that always know what your environment looked like when you left and what it should look like when you come back. And so she studied everything as how it should look. And she closed the door and locked it, and she had her jacket, motorcycle jacket, and her backpack that she was going to pay for at Jan's cycle shop. Hadn't yet. But she went, 10, 15 minutes away to Mr. Ho's groceries, and he was very pleased to see her. Mr. Ho was very pleased to see Esther, and he said, "This is so wonderful because my daughter is finally here tonight, and you can meet her. The two of you are going to be sharing school together because you'll both be attending Ulysses S. Grant High School. And Mr. Ho yelled out to his daughter, Day, Day. Her name was Day. Come up for a minute. I want you to meet someone. Well, Day stopped what she was doing, came out front. Day was a Korean girl, 100%, and she was Gothic, and she had black hair naturally, but a streak of purple in it. Her eyes had quite a bit of black makeup. Her lips were black, had black lipstick, and of course her nails were black. She had some piercings on her nose, on her brow. And she came up complaining, Dad, I'm not going to get this done if you keep interrupting me. And Mr. Ho said, Day, I want you to meet Esther. She's the girl I was talking to you about. She just arrived from China, and she's going to be attending school with you. Day looked at Esther and was puzzled and said, Are you the girl that saved someone at the Wilson-Barnett Mall from being shot at? And Esther was a little surprised. And she said, Well, I did stop a man from making a big mistake. And Day said, Well, that girl her name is Raven. And she's a good friend of mine, and I really appreciate your doing this for her. And Day said, Did she even thank you for saving her life? And Esther said, Well, as a matter of fact, she did. And they said, Well, that's really great. And her boyfriend, I'm not so certain about him, but they went and had pizza, I'm told, after that experience. And she had to pay for it. So at any rate, I'll probably see you around at school tomorrow. You should look me up. Mr. Ho said, Day, why don't you go ahead and go home? And, well, I'll finish up tonight. And Day said, Okay, all right, that's great, Dad. How are you getting around? She asked Esther. Esther said, I've got a bike. And Day looked at her, rather puzzled. And Esther could tell that she was a little confused and maybe disappointed in that she thought she was riding a bicycle. So Esther clarified it. Kawasaki 650, a Ninja. And Day said, Oh. And so Day was more impressed. So Day hung up her apron, walked out the front door. And so Esther then finished finding a few groceries. They were all up front row close. paid Mr. Ho for the waffle iron and the groceries, and then she left. It was a rather cold, cool, damp night, and as she got to the parking lot, she heard some whimpering, and she could see that there was several men at a very old car, and one of them had Day inside, and he was trying to get on top of her, and she was struggling with him. The two others were close by watching, and when one of them saw Esther, he made a move where he started walking towards her and said something like, "You want to join the party?" And Dave was yelling, "Get out of here. Run." So Esther continued to walk forward, and the guy had a knife, butterfly knife, and he's flashing it around. As Esther got to him, she took her fist and ran it through his neck. His neck broke. She had already removed his knife from his hand. He fell down to the ground. She put the knife away somewhere on her person. The second person, he came at her, and as he approached, Esther broke his neck too, and he dropped. And then she got to the third person that was trying to get on top of Day and rape her, and she pulled him off after sending her foot into his crotch, destroying his scrotum. And she pulled him out, and as she did, she struck him hard in the neck, but not so hard as to break his neck. She knew the injury she had done to his scrotum was going to kill him, but it would be a more slow death. And so he laid on the ground in too much pain to sound loud. Day pulled herself up out of the car, straightened her clothing, and then hugged Esther and said to her, "I am taking you as my sister." And she said this in Korean. She knew Esther spoke Korean. She said, "I am taking you as my sister." And Esther excitedly said, "I've always wanted a sister. I'm very, very happy to call you my sister." And so he looked at the three men on the ground and said, "You should probably go ahead and go home. My dad and I can clean this mess up." And Esther had realized that Mr. Ho had come out. He was holding Esther's receipt. He thought perhaps Esther wanted the receipt, which he had forgotten to give to her. And he had seen what happened. So as Esther turned around and started for her motorcycle, and she stopped and picked up her backpack, which she had laid on the ground, Mr. Ho came up to her and said, I now have 2 daughters. I am very blessed. He said, Ester Saint, get plenty of sleep tonight. Tomorrow you will be in school and you'll need your rest. Esther went home, put the groceries away, did a few other things, and she herself, for the first night, slept in her Chinese Fujian bed. That bed was very, very special. One that she could have special dreams in. The next day would come and be a whole new experience.